through the minds of those individuals and shut off that that part of the brain, if you will. But the men reached out their hands, and I already did that. Then the two men said to Lot, "Whom else have you here? A son-in-law and your sons and your daughters, and whomever you have in the city, bring them out of the place. For we are about to destroy this place because of their outcry has become so great before the Lord, that the Lord has sent us to destroy it." Lot went out and spoke to his son-in-law, who were to marry his daughters, and said, "Up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city." But he appeared to his son-in-law to be jesting. When the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Up, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, or you will be swept away in the punishment of the city." But he hesitated. So the men seized his hand and the hand of his wife and the hands of the two daughters, for the compassion of the Lord was upon him. And they brought him out and put him outside the city. When they had brought them out, one said, "Escape for your life. Do not look behind you, and do not stay anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains, or you will be swept away." But Lot said to them, "Oh, no, my lords. Now behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have magnified your loving kindness, which you have shown me by saving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains, for the disaster will overtake me, and I will die. Now behold, this town is near enough to flee to, and it is small. Please let me escape there. Is it, that my life may be saved." He said to him, "Behold, I grant you this request also, not to overthrow the town of which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I can do nothing until you arrive there. Therefore, the name of the town was called Zorah. So I'm going to stop right there for just a second. Let's go to 19:16. But he hesitated, so the men seized his hand and the hand of his wife and the hands of his two daughters, for the compassion of the Lord was great, and they brought him out and put him outside the city. So he just got, he just was saved. He just got the right of the eagle's wings. Literally. Him and his family were saved by these angelic hosts. So, once again, not seeing a man-made technology here in this supernatural event that he was brought outside. I would imagine at a very, maybe even instantaneously. When they had brought them outside, one said, "Escape for your life." So they got them outside the city. Now they're telling them, "Hey, you gotta get out of here. We're gonna destroy this thing." So he then basically, he kind of bargains with them, if you will, and says, "Look, I can't go to the mountains, but there's another little town I can, Zoar, and I can go there." The sun had risen over the earth when Lot came to Zoar. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew the cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But his wife from behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Now Abraham rose early in the morning, went to the place where he had stood before the Lord, and he looked down towards Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land and the valley, and he saw, behold, the smoke of the land ascended like the smoke of a furnace. Thus it came about, when God destroyed the cities out of the valley, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, and he overthrew the cities in which Lot lived. So we'll stop right there. So this is interesting. Now they were commanded earlier, do not look back. His wife looks back, and she basically gets nuked. This reminds me of when I was a little boy. I remember it scared the snot out of me. I think it was on a television show. I was little. I still remember it vividly, though. It really did scare me. It was, I think it was Ripley's Believe It or Not, or a show like that. And I remember I was watching it with, I think it was my dad and grandfather and a few others. And it was talking about spontaneous human combustion. And it was talking about these different cases that have come up over the years. And they have tried to... the investigation show that maybe the person was I think one was like the investigation ended up that they were smoking in bed, and that's what caused. But it was literally impossible for this cigarette to where this person, where the ignition started. It just doesn't make any sense. It didn't start. It started within the individual. It didn't start like they fell asleep smoking a cigarette, and then the blanket caught on fire, and then then they suffocated from the smoke, and then they were burnt to a crisp. No, the original ignition source was within that person, and in several cases. Now, when you're a young child, that can be somewhat traumatic because it was just random, and they didn't know why it happened. They didn't know how it happened. It just seemed to be a random occurrence. One thought was possibly a lightning strike, but then there was no evidence of anything else, like the ceiling, like lightning came through the ceiling of a house or something like that. But there was no other evidence of that. It was just basically that individual was toast. So I remember as a child, I think it was like a couple of months, like every night I would drink as much water as I could before I went to bed. Because I was I thought, well, maybe they didn't drink enough water before, and they burned up. And it's funny, the mind of a child. And I remember my dad talking about it, and he had read some different articles and agreed that this was something that was he thought of it as a supernatural event. And so when he spoke about it, when your dad speaks about something like that, you especially as a child, you tend to perk up and listen. And I did, and it not blaming him, but it just it kind of scares you all the more, like, oh, it is real, sort of thing. So this is all that to say that this event, it seems that, once again, no sign of technology required. Now, it talks about a flaming sword. It talks about, is that sword a technology that God has given them that they are able to wield to do a great number of things? That is a possibility. I don't know, but they didn't need our technology, to recreate something like that. It would take, a basically a small nuclear device. Really, we would have to create that but in an instant, that person was, well, a pillar of salt, ash, if you will. If you want to put it in those sort of terms. Now, I'm not trying to take away from the Word of God. He says what he says for a reason, but just to get the mental picture, his wife was basically vaporized in an instant. But God didn't require, Lot didn't bring out any technology with him. I doubt his daughters knew of any nuclear devices or any sort of flamethrowers or anything of that nature that we would, some sort of incendiary device that you would need to create that. It seemed that these beings, these angelic hosts, had command over something that we have just a scratching the surface of their understanding. First, you have them create blindness. Normally it would be what we would use. What SWAT teams use is called a flashbang grenade, and it renders, they'll throw that into the room, let's say, of, maybe a hostage situation. It won't kill the hostages, but it'll render the ones who have taken the hostage, the bad guys, let's just say, pretty much useless. Very loud bang, that concussion that leaves you kind of reeling. And very light, the flash is extremely bright and renders, your vision pretty much useless, for seconds. But there's no hint of this. Now, whether that's what they did was hit them with if they were able to, a flash of light, but we're not seeing, but at the same time, we don't see that Lot and his family were affected by the blindness whatsoever. So it seems that they literally overthrew the minds of those that were trying to press into the door and shut off their ability to see. So why am I talking about this? Talking about an event that God used to show us, well, he doesn't really need our technology. His word, his will be done, whether we have supersonic jets and tanks and video screens and CERN and Project Bluebeam and everything else. His will be done, whether we have all that or not. And food for thought is EMP weapons can knock out all of that in a heartbeat, as well as nuclear. But even I know we experienced this. The sun. It seems that the sun can also do that as well. Ejection of mass amount of energy that would be aimed at the earth would do the exact same thing. let alone a galactic superwave or